I got pregnant. Don't come back home. What? Was I not clear? I'm having a baby with Johnny. No. No way. Pearl, it's your fault. You neglected your husband under the guise of accompanying your mother, so you got what you deserved. Mila said this with a triumphant look. But I, without any disturbance, took the message "don't come back" quite literally. Really? I'd be delighted to. Johnny and Mila were dumbstruck by my unexpected reaction. Pearl. What are you saying? Aren't you angry that I cheated? Well, I was surprised at first, but not angry. Besides, I have a new home now. New home? What's that about? Yes, I have somewhere else to go. I don't need to bother with Johnny, whom I can't trust anymore. Mila can have him. I muttered that to myself. And these two were about to face an incredible disaster. I am Pearl, a 43-year-old working mother in construction. I have had a best friend from childhood, Mila. We've been hanging out since we were little. But in middle school, we became like delinquent friends due to our rebellious natures. That continued until high school graduation, but as we grew up, our lives took completely different paths. I have always hated studying, so instead I worked on self-improvement in my 20s, such as earning certifications. My efforts paid off, and my career got on the right track in my 30s. On the other hand, Mila spent her 20s and 30s partying, believing it is a waste not to. Now past 40, both unmarried. Mila didn't seem too concerned. But I, raised by a single mother after losing my father young, wanted to get married and repay my mother's upbringing. At work, most men close to my age were married. I casually asked my boss if he knew any eligible men. He introduced me to a single man close to my age. That's how I met Johnny. He was 2 years older than me, a construction company president. Serious and dignified. Johnny, who inherited the company from his parents, was work-focused like me. Busy with work and acquiring certifications, he hadn't been much interested in marriage. We clicked over having a lot in common, so we started dating. Within a year, we promised to marry. I told Mila the news. Really? That's great, Pearl. Congratulations. Thanks. Sorry I'm getting married before you. Don't worry about it. Just be happy. Mila seemed genuinely happy for me. Thank you. You must come to the wedding. Sure. I'll look forward to it. After informing Mila, all that was left was preparing for the wedding. Tomorrow, I'm visiting Johnny's family home for the first time. I was in a flutter of excitement. But I didn't know that the happiness would end in a blink of an eye. The next morning, I was getting ready with enthusiasm. What would Johnny's house be like? Though it's his family home, his parents have passed away. It's where Johnny now lives alone. I've always wanted to see his house. But he never invited me. It's quite far from my house, near the foot of a mountain. I planned to drive there, but Johnny offered to pick me up as the house was hard to find. Johnny said shyly while driving. Well, it's quite rural, so don't be shocked. No, I prefer quiet places to busy ones. Is it peaceful countryside? I'm really excited. I tried to lighten the mood, however. Johnny looked hesitant. It seemed like he wanted to imply don't expect too much. But to me, it's where my beloved one lives. The thought of seeing that was exciting. We drove over an hour after entering the neighboring town. We entered a dark bamboo grove, far from a peaceful pastoral scene. The car stopped in a place that felt like a creepy, abandoned area. We're here. This is my house, Johnny said, and where he dropped me off was a garage surrounded by debris. In front of me was an old house, probably over 100 years old. So this is your... Yes, this is my house. It's quite old, but it's well built, Johnny replied. I stood gaping, looking around every corner of the house. The property was large, but I naively thought that after marriage he would move out. However, Johnny's next words shocked me. "Well, come on in. This is the house we'll live in together forever, so don't be shy." "What? Living in this house forever after marriage?" I asked Johnny, feeling faint. Are we going to live here? It's nearly 2 hours by car from my office." Pearl, you can quit your job after we're married. My earnings are enough for us to live on." I was stunned by Johnny's unexpected words. We had discussed our jobs, but he never mentioned wanting me to quit after marriage. "Why? I told you I love my job. Why decide I should quit without discussing it with me?" Even when I questioned him, Johnny looked puzzled and answered, "Isn't it common sense for a woman to become a housewife after marrying a well-off husband? My mother did the same. I thought we had a mutual understanding without saying." I stood there, dumbfounded. I hadn't expected such an old-fashioned mindset in this day and age. From here, not only my company, but also my mother's house was far away. I currently live with my mother, and moving so far would be inconvenient. I was planning to discuss these things, but my mind went blank and I couldn't find the words. The house, indeed old and sturdy, had crumbling walls in places, and the floors creaked. The shower and toilet were outdated, and with few rooms, it would be inconvenient if we had children. Could I really live in this house forever? Seeing my anxious face, Johnny tried to calm me. "Don't worry. It might take some getting used to at first, but the charm of an old, antique house is great. You'll find it comfortable soon." No, that's not the issue. I wanted to say, but couldn't. For now, I decided not to say anything and asked him to take me home before it gets too late. "You should stay over, it's far," Johnny casually said, but I was not in the mood to stay. That night, I lay in bed early and thought, right, we might start in Johnny's family home, but we can move eventually. I've been working all this time and have some savings. Surely Johnny can afford to build a new home. I decided to discuss this with him next time. On my next day off, I talked to Johnny about moving into a new house. But he didn't seem keen on the idea. "Why? It's a waste to move when we already have a house," Johnny said, already set on living in his own home. Am I being selfish for caring about convenience to my workplace and family home? I felt a rising irritation. Yet, I didn't dislike Johnny, and we got married as planned. The wedding was grand, befitting a construction company owner. Mila attended, of course. Flashy and youthful-looking Mila stood out, attracting male attention. Even Johnny the groom. "That beautiful woman is Pearl's friend?" he asked. I felt a twinge of jealousy, despite being the bride. The wedding ended without a hitch, and our married life began. Johnny lived leisurely in his familiar home. I resigned from my job and became a housewife, but felt somewhat uneasy. So, I hatched a plan. Then one day, I received a call from the hospital where my mother was a patient. She had suddenly fallen ill and was hospitalized. I rushed to the hospital and entered the room where my mother is in. "Mom, are you okay?" "Pearl, sorry for worrying you," my mother replied, looking very unwell. According to the doctor, her condition wasn't good, and she needed a long-term hospital stay. I returned home to take care of my mother for a while. Then, I packed my things and told Johnny that I'd be away for some time to accompany my mother. But Johnny didn't seem too concerned about her. "Ah, I see. Well, take your time," he said casually. I frowned at Johnny's reaction. It sounded as if I was going out for fun, despite me saying I was attending to my seriously ill mother. Yet, Johnny looked displeased at my expression. "Huh? What's with that face? Did I say something wrong?" "No, it's nothing," I replied. Come to think of it, Johnny was raised in a wealthy environment. Expecting him to understand was perhaps too much. So, I left without saying more and went back to the hospital. 3 months have almost passed since my mother was hospitalized. Her condition remains the same, requiring my constant attendance. But what bothers me is Johnny hasn't visited even once. Is he still holding a grudge because I frowned at his words? If so, that's rather childish. Lying in her bed, my mother looked at me worriedly. Pearl, is Johnny all right? Don't worry about me. Why don't you go back home? It's okay, Mom. I do go home occasionally. I reassured her, not wanting to worry her further, but truthfully, I felt anxious. For the first month, I did check on the house. But Johnny was always in a bad mood and hardly spoke to me. I would just finish the housework and return to the hospital. Gradually, I started feeling like Johnny was managing on his own, and I wasn't needed. Alone at night, as my mother slept, I wondered, is this how things should be? Months passed with me lost in these thoughts, when I received a call. It was Mila. Hello? Pearl, it's been a while. Just thought of you and called. Mila, really long time. How have you been? Her voice uplifted my spirits. But something in Mila's reply seemed hesitant. Yeah. I'm fine. Oh, okay. I felt the conversation turn awkward, beginning to feel unsure of what to talk about next. Then, Mila broached a new topic. Hey, when are you coming back home next? What? I hadn't told Mila I was staying away to be with my mother. Her question took me by surprise. But since she reached out after so long, I recovered myself and asked her back. What's up, Mila? Did you call for something specific? No, nothing. Just wanted to hear your voice. As Mila spoke. Hey, Mila! A familiar male voice called out in the background. Mila gasped. Oh. And hurriedly ended the call. That voice. Could it be? A chill ran down my spine. It's been over 3 months since I stopped returning home. A bad feeling crept over me, and I decided to go home the next day. And the next day. After the morning rounds at the hospital, I hurried to my house. It was Sunday, so Johnny should be home. When I arrived, a bright red sports car occupied my usual parking space in the garage. That car seemed familiar. Entering the house, I saw stylish high heels in the entrance. I was right about my suspicion. Johnny! Are you here? I shouted from the entrance, and Johnny emerged, looking surprised. Pearl! Why are you back suddenly? You should have told me you were coming. Why? These shoes in the car in the garage, they're Mila's, aren't they? Yeah, Mila just happened to stop by. Johnny stammered, clearly flustered. Then, Mila appeared, dressed in a baggy overalls dress. Idiot! Don't come out! Johnny scolded her, but Mila didn't seem to care. Why? It's not like it's a secret. We had to talk about it eventually, she said defiantly. Mila stood there boldly, not showing any remorse. Her outfit was unusually simple for her, a long dress covering her ankles. It looked almost like a maternity dress. As I pondered, Mila revealed a shocking truth. I got pregnant. Don't come back home. What? Did you not hear me? I'm pregnant with Johnny's baby, she exclaimed. No way, really? Standing aside, Mila blurted out while Johnny, with a sigh, just great, kept his gaze downcast. Perhaps Johnny wished to have this conversation in a more composed state. Pearl, it's your fault. You were neglecting your husband under the guise of accompanying your mother. You brought this on yourself. Mila said this with a triumphant look. But I remained calm and collected. Seeing my calm demeanor, Mila said with puffing up her cheeks. What's with the act? I heard you don't even like this house. That's fine by me. Old as it may be, the property's spacious, the neighbors aren't nosy, and above all, Johnny's kind and wealthy. What more could I ask for? Johnny, buoyed by her high opinion of him, suddenly changed his awkward expression. When I first saw Mila at the wedding, it was love at first sight. So I figured, why not live with Mila instead of Pearl, who doesn't even like this house? That's right, Johnny called me after finding my contact in the guest list saying Pearl isn't coming back, so please, come over. I was unsure at first, but how could I say no when he needed me so much? I see. I responded indifferently to Mila's smug love story. Just playing cool, aren't you? You must be so upset. But let me remind you, Johnny's baby is growing inside me. Don't bother coming back here. With that, I decided to graciously accept her invitation with a smile. Really? I'd be delighted to. My unexpected reaction left Johnny and Mila dumbfounded. Pearl, what are you saying? Aren't you angry about my affair? Well, I was surprised at first, but not angry. Besides, I have a new home now. A new home? What are you talking about? Johnny looked utterly bewildered, so I gave him further explanation. You see, I've been house hunting since we got married. This house was fine initially, but it's not practical for children. There are no schools nearby. Mila looked startled by my words. She hadn't considered schooling for her unborn child. Why didn't you discuss this with me? Because you didn't want to move from here. So, I took it upon myself to find something. But that's no longer your concern. What do you mean? Johnny can be so oblivious. He had an affair and even got her pregnant. There's no way we'd be moving together now. I mean, you should stay here with Mila and your baby. You're well off, so just enroll your child in a distant school and drive them back and forth. As I spoke, Johnny nodded. Right. In agreement. Mila, wide-eyed, finally addressed me. Pearl, you're oddly compliant. How can you so easily accept Johnny and me? No, I've just lost faith in Johnny, who never once visited my seriously ill mother in the hospital. I've decided to live with her in the new house. We've arranged for home nursing care. Are you really not angry about the affair? You won't demand compensation later? Johnny is always so self-centered. The epitome of a coddled upbringing. Don't worry. I'm not that petty. I replied with a slight smile. I knew they would face their own karma eventually. And so, Johnny and I divorced. I moved into the new house with my mother. It's barrier-free designed, so she can recover comfortably. It's also close to the hospital, which gives me peace of mind. As for Johnny, he began his married life with Mila in that house. Mila's belly was getting bigger, but there was no hospital nearby. So, for checkups, Johnny apparently had to drive for over an hour to take her. Even then, they might have been able to have a happy married life. After a while, I got a call from Johnny. Hey! Why do we have to leave our house? I thought the day had finally come. Did your uncle visit? Yeah, he did. Did you know and hide it from me? Johnny's uncle is his father's brother. Huh? You should have known. That our house is owned by your uncle. Oh. It seemed Johnny had forgotten that and continued living in that house. I learned this when I visited Johnny's relatives before our marriage. When Johnny's father, the eldest son, was dying, he entrusted the ownership of the family home to his younger brother, the uncle. It seems they thought Johnny was too unreliable to inherit it, even though he was the successor. In other words, Johnny was living there with his uncle's permission. I totally forgot about that. But yesterday, my uncle suddenly came and said, I believe I told my wife that I was selling this land. Why did you keep such an important thing a secret? Hearing this, I think your uncle is quite the actor. I couldn't help but to laugh inwardly. I had told the uncle everything up to our divorce. He was furious and promised to give Johnny a hard time. I'm sorry. I was about to tell you about selling the house, but then you got Mila pregnant. I thought it would be best to leave the rest to you too. But it's okay. You have enough money to move anywhere, right? Yeah, about that. Johnny's voice suddenly turned gloomy. I knew what he was going to say, but pretended not to know. What happened? I got demoted from being the president. My uncle said I was too unreliable and the employees wouldn't follow me. He told me to start over as a regular employee. So my salary is less than half now. Oh, really? I responded nonchalantly, but I already knew all this from Johnny's uncle. Mila is angry. She wanted to remodel and expand the house into a spacious mansion on the land we lived in. After hearing about moving and the salary cut, she hasn't spoken to me since last night. What should I do? Johnny sounded almost tearful. Mila was indeed after Johnny for his money. Well, that's not my problem anymore. You should figure it out yourself. What? No, wait! Johnny tried to stop me, but I didn't care and hung up. The next moment, Mila called. I didn't want to answer, knowing what it was about, but she would probably keep calling if I ignored her. So I reluctantly answered. Mila's voice was furious. Hey! What are you going to do about this? It's all your fault, Pearl. I thought I had married a rich man. Mila spat out the words I expected. Well, it's not so bad. Johnny is a kind husband to you. And it's not like he is unemployed. That's not good enough. You knew, didn't you? That we had to move out. And you kept quiet. That's so unfair. What if I had told you earlier? If the ideal life for you became impossible, you would have left. That would be sad for the baby. Mila had no comeback to that. Whatever life you lead, you're going to have a family now. You need to do your best. I said just that and hung up again. I had no resentment left for losing Johnny. I just realized I had a poor judgment of men. Forced to move, Johnny and Mila apparently moved into Mila's parents' house. Though her parents were angry about Mila marrying Johnny, who took me away, they warmly welcomed them for the sake of their coming grandchild. Then, years later, Johnny and Mila, with their child, came to see me. I hadn't told them where I moved, but they had seen me in town and followed me to find out where I lived. I wondered why they went to such lengths. Pearl, are you there? Actually, I came by because my child's kindergarten entrance exam results were announced today, and we were in the area. Mila barged into my house with her affected tone. Even as a mother now, she still sports flashy makeup and fashion. I didn't really want to see her, but fearing what she might say if I acted coldly, I responded. You haven't changed. So? How did it go? I wasn't interested in Mila, but knowing she'd start something anyway, I asked. Listen to this. My child got into the best kindergarten in the area. Ah, so you came all this way to tell me that? Well, congratulations. She clearly came to boast. That's right. My child takes after the father in intelligence and, thanks to resembling me, made a great impression at the interview. Mila droned on with her bragging. Oh, is that so? Good for you. I replied sarcastically, to which Mila, disliking my tone, glared at me. Despite someone's doing, we're happily living as a family now. Having a marriage and a family is wonderful, isn't it, Johnny? Yeah, that's right. Johnny, who had been silent behind Mila, finally spoke up. Their son, indeed resembling Mila, glared at me with a proud expression. He seemed to have inherited Mila's high pride too. Speaking of the top kindergarten. Ha ha ha. Single woman like you wouldn't know about kindergartens, right? It's Nakatani Kindergarten nearby. Mila scoffed at me, so I quickly retorted. What? Who's single? I'm remarried. At this, both Johnny and Mila looked shocked. You're kidding, right? Isn't this your childhood home with your mother? Yes. I have my husband living here with me. As I said this, my husband Barrett appeared. Guests? Please, come in. Ah. You are. Seeing Barrett, the two of them exclaimed in surprise. Recognizing them, Barrett responded in a reminiscent tone. Ah, you must be Christy's parents from the other day's interview. The interviewer, was it? Yes, sorry for the late introduction. I'm Barrett, principal of Nakatani Kindergarten. Are you friends of Pearl? Thank you for your support on behalf of my wife. Hearing Barrett was the principal, they froze. Wait, the principal is Pearl's husband? Indeed. Who would have thought someone like you would marry the principal of a prestigious private kindergarten? How did you meet? Mila sneered at me. Unlike the old days, I've worked hard on myself. A woman like me. I didn't deserve to be mocked by Mila now. We met at work. My company was contracted for the kindergarten's reconstruction. Yes, I was attracted to her hard work, so I initiated our relationship. Barrett said with a shy smile. Oh, that's right. Barrett, let me introduce them. This is my ex-husband, Johnny, and his wife, Mila, who took him from me. You're making us look bad. That's right. What are you saying in front of the child? Both were flustered, facing the principal of their child's soon-to-be kindergartner. It's a prestigious kindergarten with strict family backgrounds. Knowing their complicated family circumstances might be a problem. Mila timidly asked Barrett. So, about the enrollment. Barrett's expression turned stern for a moment but then softened. Let's see how your child does in our environment first. So, our child can enroll? Johnny and Mila looked relieved. However, they didn't realize how challenging life in the kindergarten could be. Life at the kindergarten turned out to be a disaster for Johnny and Mila. Because in our school, parent connections are strong. Even a hint of bad reputation spreads quickly. So, the rumor that Mila stole the principal's wife's ex-husband spread like wildfire. Since it's a gathering of parents who are serious about their children's education, such rumors quickly isolated Johnny and Mila among the other parents. The parents' behavior negatively impacted the children. Innocent Christy ended up isolated from his friends, crying every day. I want to quit kindergarten. It was sad to see. Eventually, they had to leave the kindergarten, and Johnny's family disappeared from our lives. Later, Barrett heard from another kindergarten principal. Johnny's family had moved Christy to a public kindergarten. However, with many locals there, similar rumors spread. Johnny and Mila gradually found it uncomfortable to stay in the area. Before long, they left Christy behind and went somewhere far away. Recently, Mila's parents have been taking Christy to and from kindergarten and attending events. They're friendly with the neighbors, ensuring Christy can attend kindergarten comfortably, mindful of others. Previously indulgent, Mila's parents seem to have given up on Mila, focusing on raising Christy instead. I was worried about Christy, but hearing this from Barrett, I felt relieved. Sometime later, Mila's parents came to apologize for everything. We're truly sorry for the late apology. We wanted to bring Mila, but she absolutely refused. Is Mila at home? I was surprised, having heard Johnny and his wife were missing. According to her parents, Johnny and Mila got divorced being unable to cope with poverty. Mila returned home alone. But Christy doesn't see her as a mother and ignores her at home. Time passed, and I gave birth to my first child, a daughter, at a local hospital. I made many mom friends. Though I lost a childhood friend, I look forward to spending time with moms in similar situations. Barrett took paternity leave and is being a supportive father. This might be my happiest time. No, I shall continue enjoying parenthood, blessed with a good family and friends. Like my mother, a single mom, I want to shower my daughter with love. Even if I once went in the wrong direction, I'll trust my daughter, family, friends, and more importantly in myself. I vow to live strongly as a mother. Being a husband's housekeeper, and if you defy, I'll divorce you. That's what Tyler, who stole my black card and went on a spending spree, threatened me with. Taking advantage of my being at work, he's off gallivanting on overseas vacations. I can't stand being mocked by such a ridiculous man. Sure. At my wit's end, I dismiss a call from Tyler and set out to enact a terrifying plan of revenge. My name is Harper. A former actress, I was a star who swept the nation. Having appeared in international dramas, I was once reported overseas as captivating men around the world. My popularity back then was extraordinary. My retirement from the entertainment world came about when I married Tyler, my then manager. He was my rock, skillfully supporting me as I tirelessly traveled the globe. He took care of everything, from my health to my personal life. Even after leaving showbiz, he's been a great help with the business I'm currently handling. Now, we collaborate and run a company related to apparel. I retired from the entertainment industry to marry him, and that was 10 years ago when I was 21. At the height of my fame, my retirement announcement had the media swarming my house daily. Even fanatical fans showed up. Every day, I received letters begging me not to quit, and my departure even caused a societal stir. Rumors and various media coverage abounded, but Tyler and I, oblivious to public opinion, married at the peak of our happiness. Everyone around me supported this decision. Just before retiring, I launched my own apparel brand, and now Tyler works there as an employee. I've entrusted him with the finances, while I, as a president, market our models. Though our life seems perfect, it's been far from it lately. Tyler's been acting strange. He comes home exhausted, sighing heavily, and gazes at me with an indescribable look. What's wrong, Tyler? You've been down lately. Trouble at work? I've always understood that he tends to internalize things. That's why, during our time together, I often try to gauge his mood. It seems he struggles to voice his worries and complaints on his own, always waiting for me to intuitively act. Sure, there are times when this feels bothersome, but I've never really resented it. After all, he has dealt with more troublesome things because of me. Gratitude, I suppose, has always outweighed any annoyance. I'm tired of always being the sidekick, always following your orders. His words, so unlike the expected work-related complaints, shook me. What's this all of a sudden? You've never mentioned this before. He often deliberately spoke in a way that hurt me. He starts saying these things when his work gets busy. Since he's always so firm at work, I guess he doesn't have a place to vent. I remember venting to him numerous times when I was an actress. So, I understand how he feels. But still, being confronted with such unexpected words, my voice trembled with disturbance. I've been holding back. You are busy, and I'm the one being taken care of, if you think about it. He earns decently, but after all, he's just an employee at my company. I'm the higher earner. I never thought income mattered in our marriage, so his words were a shock to me. Even when you come home, it's all about work. You hardly pay any attention to me. When we go shopping together, you buy whatever you want without a second thought. How do you think I feel watching that? I'm actually quite patient. Why can't you be more considerate? He, pouting like a spoiled child, looked at me with dissatisfaction. Honestly, his words irritated me. Our household mostly runs on my income. I told him he could do whatever he wanted with his salary. It's my way of thanking him for all the trouble he's gone through for me. There were times when we were poor, and he supported and provided for me. I thought I was repaying him for all his sacrifices, even until the day I retired, by letting him use his time as he pleased. It's heartbreaking to hear such ungrateful words from him. The clothes and accessories I buy during our shopping trips are from money I saved. If anything, I'm the one who's been holding back. These thoughts flash through my mind, and anger starts to build within me. Harper, you're just too free. I want more time off, and I'd like to travel leisurely. The job at the company pays well but leaves no time. I joined your company specifically to ease your burden. Don't I deserve some gratitude? Instead of prioritizing your time, give me some time to rest too. When I retired, he chose to continue in the entertainment industry as a manager, staying behind while I left. But when my business started taking off after we got married, Tyler changed his mind and wanted to be my support. If I join the company, you won't be lonely, right? I want to be there for you, Harper. Since I wanted to spend more time with him, I agreed to let him join our company. I never asked him to join, so why am I being treated like this? Isn't this life enough? Isn't he being too selfish? While I was pondering this, he made a proposal that felt like a final blow. Hey, my parents are turning 60 soon. Can I take some time off for their celebration? That's all I ask. No more demands from me, but I'll need 2 weeks off. I want to take them on an overseas trip. They've never been to Mexico, and I want to show them the delicious food and beautiful sights there. I was taken aback by his unexpected request and felt a sense of discomfort. A 2-week vacation could be easily taken by using paid leave. Our company is known for its easy vacation policies. There's no reason for such a confrontational approach unless something else is going on. Despite this, the fact that he would come to me directly with such a hostile attitude for negotiation struck me as odd. I thought so, but it was just a hunch. There was nothing concrete to prove this uneasy feeling. While suppressing my irritation, I calmly responded. That's fine, but I can't join you this year. There's an important fashion show for our models and the Paris collection needs preparation. Can you ask if next year works? I'll adjust my schedule then. As his wife, I can't miss my parents-in-law's 60th birthday celebration. But this year, our company has 2 major events, and I can't afford the time to travel. I suggested postponing, but he refused with a smile. That's fine. I'll just go with my family. I want to spend some time with them. As the accountant, my absence won't disrupt the work too much. His reference to family pained me, as if implying I'm an obstacle. So, how about it? I deserve some free time too, right? He has always been someone who speaks without malice, often impulsively. His honesty and straightforwardness are some of his good traits, but sometimes he speaks too hastily. No one is perfect, and I chose him as my partner, flaws included, but this way of speaking is just too much. Even if he doesn't intend it, why do I have to be spoken to like this? Doesn't he care about me at all? Harper? Are you listening to me? Despite this, I've always received great care from my parents-in-law. I can't often visit their house due to work, but when I do, they treat me like their own daughter, always praising my work. I'm so happy to have such a proud daughter. Samantha, my mother-in-law, expressed joy since I married, and Cody, my father-in-law, also celebrated our marriage with happiness. It's their birthday celebration, after all. I understand his desire to celebrate it this year. But how can I respond positively after being spoken to in such a manner? It's no problem. Take 1 or 2 weeks, whatever you prefer. Unable to bear his harsh words, I let my anger show. This must have been the turning point for Tyler. He stood up, irritated, and left the living room without a word. We have separate bedrooms due to our work schedules. From that day until his departure for the trip, we didn't see each other at all. Is that really true? Isn't Tyler being too harsh? Mia, my secretary, noticed something was off on the day Tyler left for his trip and pressed me for details. Mia is truly a talented individual and has been a support since I started running the company. As women, we often share the same opinions, and I trust her perhaps even more than Tyler. She's adept at sensing my moods and quick to assist when I'm down or about to make a mistake. I dote on Mia like family. She looks up to me like a sister, and I often consult with her. Her candid advice is always helpful. And now, noticing my unusual demeanor, she expressed her concern. I hesitated at first to tell her everything, but if I continued working like this, it could affect my performance. I decided to confide in her about everything that had happened up to today. She furrowed her brow in anger as I spoke. If I were his wife, I'd have spoken up firmly. I've always thought this, but Harper, you're too lenient with him. I understand you love him, but you shouldn't let yourself be taken for granted. Her straightforward reasoning felt like a blow to my heart. In a world where everyone hesitates to speak their mind to me, Shay's the only one who treats me as an equal. This refreshing and comforting feeling is precious to me. As one's position rises, people tend to become more humble and reserved. Having someone like her who confronts me head-on is truly invaluable. You're right. What should I do? Can't you call Tyler? Maybe try talking to him after work today? There's no need to be considerate about disturbing his trip. If this continues, it could lead to a divorce crisis. Do you understand? Her sisterly advice left me with no response but to agree. Since work ended early that day, following her suggestion, I decided to call him immediately. He was in Mexico. The time difference wasn't significant, and he should be resting in his room after dinner. I had texted him earlier to let him know I needed to talk, so he should be expecting the call. Expecting no issues, I called, but he didn't answer. Maybe he's still enjoying his time with everyone? I'll try calling again later. I tried calling every 30 minutes, but still no answer. Worried, I contacted Samantha to inquire about Tyler's well-being. Hello, Harper. Sorry we went on this trip just with our family. Cody and I told Tyler we'd prefer if you were with us, but he insisted. Samantha used to be strict and education-focused, as Tyler once told me. But now, she's kind and always concerned about my busy life, offering comforting words. No, I'm sorry I couldn't make it this year due to our company's busy schedule. Next year, I'll make time for a proper celebration. Oh, don't worry about it. Just the fact that you're giving us such a wonderful trip is more than enough. Samantha's kind words with a smile made me feel uneasy. A trip is a gift? Hearing a word that was unfamiliar to me, I asked Samantha to clarify. She seemed surprised by my question and explained the situation with a tone of shock. Oh, isn't that right? I heard from him that this trip was fully funded by you since you couldn't join the trip. Wait, what? I screamed out loud, completely unaware of this story. Samantha must have realized from my reaction that I knew nothing about it. She hurriedly continued her explanation, seemingly puzzled. Isn't this trip arranged by you? He paid for everything using your credit card, so I thought it was a gift from you. The trip included Samantha and Cody, of course, as well as my sister-in-law, Luna, and her husband, Tommy. 5 people in total. Even a conservative estimate for flight costs alone would be around $300 per person. With other expenses included, the total would easily surpass $1,500. Using such a significant amount of money without consultation was completely out of line. Especially since I've been managing our living expenses. He doesn't gamble, his salary should be entirely at his disposal. He should have more than enough income to cover such costs himself. Yet here we are. With him not answering my calls, my emotions were filling with anger. Samantha, sensing my distress, spoke with concern. Harper, are you okay? We'll repay the full amount later. Tyler wanted to cover all the travel expenses, which felt odd to us. Cody and I were planning to visit you later, since we haven't seen you in a while. This trip might have been orchestrated under unbelievable circumstances. Samantha thought, and with a tone of concern, she spoke to me considerately. You are not at fault. Please use that money for your enjoyment, as it's also a celebration for you. I'll make sure Tyler takes care of the bill. Could you tell me more about how this trip was planned? I wondered what he was up to, not answering my calls. This trip must have been meticulously planned months in advance. He was using me, capitalizing on my ignorance. Such thoughts began to emerge at that moment. Then, as I heard more from Samantha, I learned a shocking truth. The trip was initially proposed by Luna and Tommy. Incredibly, it wasn't Tyler who suggested this, but Luna and Tommy, who always nitpicked at me. Tommy, an executive at a rival company. Tommy, looking down on me for being a female CEO and considering our companies our rivals, always seemed displeased when we met. Luna, always full of pride, had a grip on Tyler even before our marriage, and he couldn't stand up to her. It seems they didn't like him showing me any affection. It seems they disliked the affection Tyler showed towards me. Even though they conveniently used him themselves, they couldn't stand him being even slightly nice to me. Both Luna and Tommy, always competitive, disliked me, and I tried to keep my distance from them. However, they targeted me and persuaded Tyler to plan this trip. It's likely that his aggressive confrontation with me that day was instigated by Luna and Tommy. They probably wanted him to create a situation where I would be the unwanted one, as they thought they couldn't enjoy themselves with me around. They chose a day when they could make me an outcast and brought Tyler along to provide the funds. I'm so sorry, I didn't know anything about this. Tyler told us not to contact you directly because you were busy. Samantha apologized. If Samantha, Cody, and I, unaware of the plan, had communicated, the plan would have been exposed, potentially straining my relationship with Tyler. To prevent this, Samantha and Cody were instructed to restrict their actions. To prevent any disruption of their plan, it was necessary to impose certain restrictions on Samantha and Cody beforehand. For them, unaware of how busy my work schedule was, Tyler's advice was taken as an absolute directive. They adhered strictly to his words, deciding to thank me only after they returned from the trip. Harper, did you give Tyler a credit card or something? He was making payments with a black card I've never seen before. What? Samantha's frantic behavior suggested that Cody was also listening and had a question for me. The moment Cody mentioned the black card, I hastily checked the contents of my safe. The black card he referred to was the important credit card used for company expenses. Only Tyler and I, who knew the safe's password, could access it. I had trusted him enough not to suspect him of stealing, but the credit card that should have been in the safe was missing, revealing that he had been secretly embezzling company funds. As the accountant, he could freely manipulate the records. He had exploited his position, misusing company funds for personal gain. Realizing this fact, my anger reached its peak, and I shared the story with Samantha and Cody. Both of them were shocked to learn this astonishing fact. They must have been dumbfounded. Falling silent as if they had lost their words, Samantha seemed to be panicking in a flustered manner. What should we do? Are we complicit in this embezzlement? We'll return to the US immediately with Tyler. Even though we didn't know, we're still complicit. We'll accept our punishment when we get back. Cody's words, full of responsibility, made me deny their need for punishment. It wasn't Samantha and Cody's fault. They were completely unaware of the scheme orchestrated by Luna, Tommy, and Tyler. Punishing them was out of the question for me. Cody, that's unnecessary. You two were deceived by Tyler and knew nothing. You're not at fault. But I can't let them get away with this. Can you help me with something I'm planning? Sure. I've been ignoring what Tyler has been doing all this time, and that was my mistake. He's been making a fool of me, thinking an apology would suffice if he got caught. This isn't just a marital issue, it's a company issue. I need to teach him a lesson. All right. We'll help with anything we can. With this, I laid out a revenge plan to them. I was surprised at my own capacity for such a scheme, but my affection for Tyler had clearly ended. Filled with hatred and anger, I revealed my terrifying plan, initially bewildering Samantha and Cody. However, realizing their responsibility as parents, they made a decision. They agreed to my plan, choosing to be my allies in this matter. During this discussion, Tyler unexpectedly called me. I ended the call with Samantha and Cody to answer his call. What's up? Having a family trip and still wanting to talk about something important? His sarcastic words only increased my irritation. You took your time to call. What were you doing? Just having some drinks at a bar with Mom and the others. This confirmed his lie. I had just been on the phone with Samantha and Cody, and there was no noisy bar in the background. Moreover, there was no reason for them to lie to me. Likely, Tyler was out drinking with Luna and Tommy. His words, so dismissive of our time and relationship, confirmed my feelings had completely cooled. Oh, is that so? By the way, Tyler, you haven't been doing anything with the company's expenses, have you? He was clearly startled by my sudden question. What's this all of a sudden? His tone, usually light and cheerful, turned serious, unlike anything I had heard from him before. Was this his true nature? His change in tone, seeing me as an adversary, prompted me to respond firmly. I was just wondering, considering an audit is coming up soon for the company. You're suspecting me? His defensive response to a simple question indicated his guilt. His poor reply made me laugh involuntarily. What's the matter? I was just worried and asked, and now you think I'm suspecting you. Did you do something wrong? Nothing like that. But hey, when I get back home, the house isn't going to be a mess, is it? Suddenly changing his demeanor and trying to switch the topic, his actions became even more suspicious. Why couldn't he realize that such behavior only made him more suspect? I was almost impressed by his lack of intelligence. What do you think? I'm busy with work, too. Stop it. I hate the idea of coming back to a dirty house with bugs and stuff, you know? A wife is her husband's housekeeper, and if you defy, I'll divorce you. Even the executive director often threatens his wife with that. I might have to do the same. You wouldn't like that, right? So, keep the house clean. I had never seen he and the executive director being friendly. What he was saying now was probably his true feelings. But, perhaps aware of his weaker position, he used someone else as a shield, making me sigh in exasperation at his patheticness. Sure, I'll be careful. There was no need to continue the conversation with him. He was completely underestimating me. Using company funds and embezzling. I could have him arrested for embezzlement. I won't show mercy, even to my husband. But that alone wouldn't satisfy me. After hanging up with him, I immediately made a call to a certain place. The next day, as I was busy preparing for a fashion show, I received several calls. Of course, it was Tyler. I noticed his calls late at night, while I was out for a certain reason. Fortunately, Mia was with me, so she drove while I answered his call. You're late. What have you been doing? His rough tone, heard through the speakerphone, surprised both Mia and me. Just work, what else? Harper, did you do something yesterday? Something? What do you mean? Don't play dumb. Tell me the truth. What did you do? Tyler was in total panic, and in the background, I could hear several Mexican men confronting Luna, Tommy, and Tyler. It sounds noisy. What's happening? It's nothing. He suddenly became flustered after shouting. Realizing he'd be at a disadvantage if he spoke out, he struggled to find the right words. His behavior was so bizarre that I decided to explain the situation to him. It was time for him to taste true despair. Too bad. You were supposed to be enjoying a lavish time in Mexico, but now you've woken up from that dream overnight, right? But it's your own fault for misusing someone else's money. Did you do something, Harper? While he was reacting strangely, I explained what I had done the previous day. I contacted the president of the credit card company I had a contract with. Despite the late hour, the president, always grateful for my patronage, agreed to suspend the company's credit card early in the morning. If a credit card is misused, the company doesn't have to pay the shop, so the shop bears the full loss. However, this time, since the payment was supposed to be made in full at the hotel checkout, Tyler, unable to use the stopped card, was now stranded and being questioned at the hotel reception. Tyler, Mom and Dad have already checked out. The cab they reserved took them away, so there's no one to pick you up. Luna, cornered, desperately asked Tyler what to do. Hearing this, he became even more panicked and turned his anger towards me. Doing such a thing, you think you can get away with it? Are you okay with us getting divorced? Please do. In fact, I prefer divorce from a husband who embezzles company funds. I've already spoken to the lawyer, and will proceed with the divorce proceedings. He, flustered by my unshaken demeanor, realized his mistake. I've been silent about everything you have done so far. There was truth in him supporting my work, and I was grateful to him. But I've reached my limit. But, realizing his dire situation, he pathetically acknowledged my fury. The reception, relentlessly demanding payment, showed no mercy. He, relying on an interpreter, couldn't speak Spanish at all. Listening to this, I had an idea and suggested to him to pass the phone to them. Nobody there speaks Spanish, right? Can you let me talk to them? I'll explain for you. Will you help me? I'm glad to switch. Thinking that I had changed my mind after his apparent regret, he quickly handed his mobile phone to the hotel reception. I explained the situation to the reception in Spanish, and they quickly understood. To ease any concerns, I got their contact information, which Mia noted down. They happily agreed to cooperate with my deal. After talking to me, they returned the phone to Tyler. What happened? Did you sort it out? Yes, I took care of it. Now it's up to you guys to manage. Really? You're a lifesaver, Harper. I love you. With that, he was called back to the reception. Unaware of our conversation, he ended the call and followed them. Are you okay? This might turn into a big problem. Just perfect. It's the right kind of hell for them. An hour later, as expected, Tyler called many times. When I answered, he was in a pathetic state. What's going on, Harper? What is this place? He showed me a video call of a slum street. Tyler, Luna, and Tommy had been taken to the slums and stripped of all their belongings. The fact that they ended up in one of Mexico's most dangerous slums was unexpected. The receptionist had told me. I was a fan of Harper. I'll arrange the punishment, leave it to me. But I never expected it would be this place. I laughed out loud at the location, far beyond my expectations. Lucky you. Still alive in the most dangerous place in Mexico. It's a miracle you're alive. That's impossible. Wait, Harper. What do you mean? Explain, and come to help us right now. From the video call, it was clear they could hear my voice. The homeless people surrounding them were causing a commotion. You were causing trouble for Harper. It's your fault. You three should reflect. Samantha and Cody appeared on the call, surprising Luna and the others. Mom and Dad, what are you doing? Harper's acquaintance flew us back on a private jet to the US, and Harper came to pick us up. We knew you were trying to trap Harper. We asked her to do whatever she wanted. At that moment, the homeless people behind them started questioning Luna, Tyler, and Tommy. The slum residents were merciless, even to women, if they seemed to have anything valuable. As they argued on the video call in the dangerous streets, it was natural they'd become prey. I spoke to the locals in the background, smiling. These men have been misusing my credit card and have been terrible to me every night. Do whatever you like with them. I want them to see hell. They agreed, saying, leave it to us. The call ended abruptly, likely because the phone was taken. Since then, they have been living in fear in the slums. Treated poorly by the locals and unable to afford a return to the US. They were effectively trapped abroad. I confirmed the events with the hotel reception afterward. Their acquaintance, apparently a boss in the slums, agreed to take care of Tyler and the others in exchange for a treat of fine liquor. The agreement was made on the condition that they'd be safe from life-threatening situations. In return, I agreed to sing at their hotel, the only song I released during my active years. The song you released is still my treasure. Your thanks can be in the form of a song, so come stay at our hotel. I'll tell the manager to give you the best service. With this, I successfully took my revenge on Tyler and the others. Since then, I've managed to divorce Tyler with the help of the men from the hotel. I feel relieved and am spending enjoyable times with Samantha and Cody. Luna and Tommy were fired for their unauthorized absence from work. Without their phones, they couldn't contact anyone. Samantha and Cody explained the situation well, so it didn't become a police matter, and no one else cared about them. Thus, my ties with Tyler were completely severed. Since then, I've been focusing on my work and enjoying life. Occasionally, I call the hotel reception to check on Tyler and the others, who are still living in a hellish environment. I feel no pity for them, despite the severity of their punishment. I only asked to spare their lives and now enjoy my own life to the fullest.
Frankly, you're just dead weight to this company. Incompetent old lady, you're fired. Ever since the president's niece, who came from the head office, became the head of our department, the workplace atmosphere has turned sour. She fell head over heels for a male colleague and persistently clung to him, neglecting her work. Because of this, we subordinates have been swamped with overtime, with even our lunch breaks getting cut short. Moreover, even consulting with the president brought no solutions. Then one day, the department head handed me my dismissal. At first, I couldn't accept it, but continuing to pour my efforts into this company seemed senseless. I appreciate everything. With those words, I left the office. In my heart, I thought, you'll regret this too late, muttering to myself. My name is Chloe, 51 years old. I work as an office worker at a subsidiary of a certain corporation. While both men and women are increasingly remaining single for life, I am single too. I've always been a workaholic, preferring work over marriage. In my 30s, I sometimes panicked. I might end up alone forever if I don't get married soon. But around the time I turned 40, I became less fixated on it. Even now, I think I'd consider marriage if the right opportunity came along. My relationships at work were excellent, especially the younger colleagues who looked up to me, often inviting me out for meals or drinks and coming to me for advice. My days were fulfilling. However, everything changed when our department head was replaced. The new head, Aurora, a 39-year-old single like me, transferred from the head office, the president's niece. She fell for Benjamin, a male colleague in the same department. Benjamin is 45 now. He's a clean-cut guy, popular among the younger female staff. He's a man of few words, but highly competent. From her first day, Aurora stuck to Benjamin and unfortunately started slacking off at work. That day, even though it was only 10 a.m., Aurora said to Benjamin, "Mr. Benjamin, it's about time for a lunch break, right? Why don't you join me for lunch? There's a chic restaurant about 20 minutes away by taxi." "Manager, it's too early for lunch, and we can't go to a place that takes 20 minutes by taxi. Our lunch break is only supposed to be an hour." "Don't worry, I'm the manager, after all. If I'm with you, you're allowed to take as long a break as you want." At Aurora's words, not only Benjamin but everyone in the office frowned. Actually, I had been consulted by Benjamin several times about Aurora. Aurora, it seems, kept taking Benjamin to the conference room during work hours for idle chatter, and Benjamin was troubled because he couldn't get his work done. Feeling I had no choice, I went to Aurora's desk and said, "Manager, there's still time before lunch. Benjamin has work that needs to be done right now. If you take a 2 or 3 hour lunch break, the rest of us employees will have to pick up the slack." "What? Is that a problem?" Aurora glared at me sharply. "It's a big problem, especially since our rival's performance has been improving lately, and the president has told us to work harder than ever. My uncle has entrusted me with the full responsibility for this department. I don't need you telling me what to do." I couldn't believe these words were coming from someone about to turn 40. The excessive overtime and inability to take a proper lunch break for us other employees were due to Aurora disrupting Benjamin's work. Moreover, Aurora would swiftly leave work as soon as it was time to clock out. Even if our beloved Benjamin was working overtime, she preferred to leave right on time. After Aurora repeatedly ignored my warnings, I decided to talk to the president directly. "President, the manager is interfering with Mr. Benjamin's work. Please, could you do something about it?" "Well, I've heard about it from Benjamin and other employees, but I've left the department entirely to Aurora. It's not for me to intervene." "But the work progress is getting worse." The president sighed in annoyance. "Really? We need to work hard not to fall further behind our rivals. I have a lot of other things to do. Don't add to my workload." "But..." "Don't make me repeat myself. Get back to work, that's all." I was dumbfounded. I never thought the president would be this kind of person. though I had heard rumors of mistrust from some employees, so it was true. Perhaps the president found it bothersome to meddle in subordinate relationships and was somewhat favoring his niece, Aurora. That's why I, the most senior in the department, along with the section and division heads, had to keep warning Aurora whenever she caused trouble. Moreover, the frequency of Benjamin's consultations about Aurora increased, and he and I spent more time together. It didn't take long for Aurora to start disliking me. That day, after managing to escape Aurora's persistent lunch invitations as usual, Benjamin and I had lunch outside. Returning to the office after the meal, Aurora muttered to me, "Acting flirty at your age? Huh? Ridiculous!" I was taken aback. I never expected to evoke such jealousy from a woman over a decade younger at my age. After hearing what Aurora had muttered, Benjamin later apologized to me. "I'm sorry for causing trouble for you, Chloe." Benjamin bowed deeply, but he wasn't at fault. "Don't worry about it. I'll do my best so that you and the other younger employees can work comfortably. Feel free to talk to me about anything, okay?" However, since then, Benjamin has reduced how often he spoke to me in front of Aurora, trying not to cause me trouble. So I started initiating conversations with Benjamin. I couldn't ignore a junior colleague in trouble, as I've always done, and Aurora's jealousy towards me grew stronger by the day. One day, as usual, because of Aurora, Benjamin and I ended up working overtime. "Another day of overtime," I muttered to myself. Aurora, sneering, said to me, "Chloe, working overtime again. Overtime is for the incompetent who can't get their work done right. Benjamin doesn't need to stick around and help an old lady like you." Aurora didn't know I was helping with the work Benjamin couldn't finish. Incredibly, despite being a manager, she had no idea how much or what kind of work her subordinates were doing. Then Benjamin, with a raised corner of his eye, looked at Aurora and said, "Chloe is helping me with overtime because you're interfering with my work. Chloe is neither incompetent nor an old lady." Benjamin himself had repeatedly asked Aurora, "Please don't interfere with my work." But seeing Benjamin openly angry and counter-arguing like this was a first for me. Aurora, taken aback, stepped back and looked like she was about to cry. Then glaring at me, she left the office without a word. The next morning when I arrived at work, Aurora was unusually already there. Since Aurora always arrived several minutes late, I was surprised. Seeing me, Aurora said, "Chloe, could you come here, please?" I went to her desk, and the next moment, Aurora said something outrageous to me. "You're fired." What? Shocked by Aurora's sudden announcement, I stood there doubting my own ears. "Please pack up your desk. You'll be paid 30 days severance pay, so you don't need to come in tomorrow." Wait a minute. What's the reason for my dismissal? I can't accept this. Of course I said this to Aurora. "You have too much overtime. Our company can't afford to pay overtime to someone as incompetent as you." "Excuse me? But that's because you've been interfering with Benjamin's work." "It's not just about the overtime. Being just a regular employee at your age? Frankly, you're just dead weight to this company. An incompetent old lady like you is fired." At that moment, I remembered how Benjamin had defended me and gotten angry at Aurora the day before. Probably Aurora felt even stronger resentment towards me and decided to expel me from the company. The junior employees, including Benjamin, who was present, protested vehemently against my dismissal. But Aurora, even to Benjamin's words, just said, "Quiet," and wouldn't listen. Initially, I couldn't accept the dismissal, but then I thought about it again. Why work under such a person, feeling miserable every day? Is there any point in contributing my valuable time and effort to a company led by someone who lets such a person run rampant? Finally, I answered Aurora. "Understood. I appreciate everything." And then I packed my personal items from my desk. As I was leaving the office at the end of the day, Aurora, laughing in a high-pitched voice, said, "How refreshing to be rid of an incompetent subordinate." I didn't retort and just left the company silently. In my heart, I thought, "You'll regret this too late," muttering to myself. The next day when I was at home, I surprisingly received a call from Aurora. I thought I had handed over my work to the section heads, division heads, and other employees. Could there have been something I missed? Though I didn't want to talk to Aurora, I reluctantly answered the phone. Hello? Hello, Chloe. You left your coffee cup in the break room, you know? Aurora reminded me, and I realized I had forgotten to check for any left-behind items in the break room, preoccupied with handing over my work. I'm sorry. Please feel free to dispose of it. I thought that was the end of the call, but Aurora continued talking. Oh, really? By the way, everyone's been complaining to me about firing you. But even without someone as incompetent as you, our company will do just fine, you know? It seemed the real reason Aurora called me was not about the forgotten item, but rather to vent her irritation from being complained to by the subordinates. At your age, finding another job will be tough, won't it? So sad being single and all. It's your fault for being an incompetent who only does overtime, right? Anyway, today's a $10 million deal day. Who's handling it? At that moment, I heard Benjamin's voice faintly over the phone. The person in charge resigned yesterday. What? The person handling that deal was Chloe. What? Apparently surprised, a loud noise came through the phone, probably Aurora dropping it. After picking up the phone, Aurora said to me, You're kidding, right? When I told you that you were fired, you didn't say a word about handling such an important deal. No one else mentioned it to me either. Everyone tried to tell you. If Chloe was fired, the crucial deal would fall through. But you didn't listen to anyone's words. That's why this happened. When I left the office thinking to myself, You'll regret this too late. It was precisely about this. I could foresee Aurora running into an unbelievable problem. Wanting to punish Aurora, I deliberately left the company without revealing I was in charge of the $10 million deal. I felt sorry because I knew the failed deal would surely impact the company's performance, inconveniencing my colleagues. However, understanding my feelings after ending Aurora's verbal abuse, everyone ultimately sent me off with their blessings. Moreover, everyone was fed up with the president. After I accepted the dismissal, they unanimously said in a place Aurora couldn't hear, We don't care what happens to this company anymore. Manager, I'm considering resigning from this company. Then I heard Benjamin's voice. Resigning? Why, Benjamin? It's not just me. Everyone here is thinking of resigning. Chloe was involved not only in the $10 million deal, but in other major projects. Our key clients were contracting with us because Chloe was here. Now that Chloe's gone, this company is finished. It might sound odd to say it myself, but I didn't work as a workaholic for so many years for nothing. While my female colleagues from my generation and juniors resigned upon getting married, I just kept working relentlessly. Naturally, I was quite skilled in my job. Since my early 20s, I always prioritized work and spent my days focused on it. Interestingly, about 15 years ago, I was appointed as a manager. However, I felt more fulfillment working as a regular employee than in a managerial position. So I asked the president to demote me back to a regular employee. Chloe was contributing so much to the company, Aurora muttered, and then I heard another employee, not Benjamin, speaking to her. Apparently, they were just on the phone with the client for the deal, and upon learning I was no longer handling it, Please consider our conversation null and void, they said. That's terrible. My uncle emphasized several times that we must succeed in this deal. Tell them. The manager from the head office will personally handle it. I heard the employee, as instructed by Aurora, speaking on the phone to the client. However, the client insisted on nullifying the deal and even hung up. This is serious. I need to speak to them myself and resolve this. Then Aurora frantically started calling the client. Her explanations were so confused, I tensed up, worrying she might anger them further. Aurora had little grasp of what her subordinates were working on. Though it's not surprising this happened, it was still dreadful. A few minutes into Aurora's call, there was a sudden silence, followed by her weak mutter. They hung up on me. I could imagine Aurora standing at her desk, pale-faced. Honestly, I felt a sense of satisfaction. It even brought a smile to my face. Then I said to Aurora on the phone, "Hello, manager, can you hear me?" "What? Hello?" "I'll be hanging up now. Again, thank you for everything." Just as I was about to press to end the call button, Aurora stopped me. "Wait, don't hang up. Chloe, please come back to the company." "What?" "I'll apologize for everything I've said and done to you. Please just come back." Aurora sounded desperate, but of course I had no intention of returning. "I'm sorry, but that's impossible. Excuse me." "Wait, don't hang up. I said I'd apologize." "You are the one who fired me, right? And now that things have gone wrong, you want to act as if nothing happened and expect me to come back. That's too convenient. Goodbye." Then I finally hung up the phone. Aurora called several times after that, but I blocked her number without hesitation. That evening, while preparing dinner, my doorbell rang. Opening the front door, I was surprised to find Aurora and the president standing there. "Even though I left everything to Aurora, I never imagined she would dismiss you of all people. I'm truly sorry. Of course your dismissal is canceled. Please come back." "I'm so sorry." Both of them bowed deeply to me. "Without Chloe, today was truly disastrous. The $10 million deal was cancelled, and all the subordinates submitted their resignation letters to me. Please come back." "I'm sorry, but please leave. As I said over the phone, I have no intention of returning to your company." I made my stance clear to them. Yes, they were reluctant to leave. "Please, we need you. Without you, our company will surely collapse." "Please, if you return, the employees who submitted their resignation letters will surely come back. Benjamin will continue to work for us too." I, like Chloe, have no intention of returning to the company. Turning around, I saw Benjamin walking from the living room towards the entrance. "What? Why is Benjamin at Chloe's house?" "All thanks to the manager." Aurora didn't seem to understand Benjamin's words. Stunned, she stood frozen, mouth agape. Benjamin then added, "Chloe has always been supportive while I was troubled by the manager's persistent advances. The more the manager followed me, the closer Chloe and I became." "What? Closer?" "Chloe and I are now in a relationship." "What?" Indeed, Benjamin and I had recently become a couple. Before Aurora and the president arrived, Benjamin and I were in the kitchen cooking stew together. Benjamin lost his wife in an accident about 5 years ago. At that time, he was visibly depressed at work, and I, as his senior colleague, often encouraged him. Gradually, Benjamin started confiding in me about everything, especially about his troubles with Aurora's incessant bothering. Until recently, Benjamin saw me as a reliable senior. However, as Aurora joined our department from the head office and we started having meals and conversations more often, he began to be attracted to me as a woman, which he confessed. After Benjamin's confession, I realized I was also drawn to him. Ironically for Aurora, she ended up playing the role of a matchmaker between me and Benjamin. "That's impossible." Aurora collapsed on the spot, seemingly in shock. She looked down, unable to utter a word. Then, to the president standing beside Aurora, I said, "That's enough, isn't it? Please leave. No matter what you say, none of us will return to your company. Everyone has already found new jobs." "New jobs? Where?" "We've all decided to join your rival company." "What?" The day I was fired by Aurora, one of the junior employees told us that they knew the executive vice president of a rival company. This employee had transferred to our department from another one a few years ago, where they had worked with the person who is now the executive vice president of the rival company. The manager of the department where the junior employee used to work is also a relative of the president. It seems like this manager, like Aurora, is known for shirking work. The employees in that department had consulted the president about the manager's laziness, but he, just like in this incident, did nothing about it. Disgusted with the president, several employees resigned, one of whom is now an executive at the rival company. This growing rival company was apparently in need of more staff. When the junior employee discussed our situation with the executive, they invited all of us to join their company. Thanks to that, I quickly found a new job. Please don't make me say it again. Both of you leave. I insisted as I was about to close the door.
Wait, I understand. How about I pay you double your previous salary?
The president offered. What?
We want you back that much. Please return to us.
I was utterly dismayed by the president's words and sighed the deepest sigh of my life. President, it's not about the money. We've decided not to return because you don't care about your employees.
I'll change that, please.
It's too late for that now. And trying to solve this with money? I can't trust you. Please leave. Finally, the president seemed to give up. He was crying and left, pulling a stunned Aurora with him. Soon after, the company collapsed. The parent company was kind enough to transfer the employees to other subordinates, or the head office. But the president, Aurora, and the lazy department manager lost their jobs. The president was even divorced by his wife. His neglect of her and lack of gratitude, coupled with the company's collapse, seemed to be the last straw. The president has not only resigned himself to a lonely old age, but also spends his days tirelessly working to repay the massive debt incurred by the company's collapse. Aurora is doing the same, working from early morning until late at night without rest, helping to pay off the president's debt. Considering it all started because of Aurora, I think it's only fair. They aren't allowed to take a break, even though they've collapsed from overwork several times. The lazy department manager from the other department was fired from every new job for the same reason, and is now living a homeless life, having been disowned by his family and relatives. As for me, I'm working hard at my new company, where the president is very caring towards the employees. I'm in a great work environment, and even managed to secure contracts with several companies I previously dealt with, including the $10 million deal, which was successfully completed at my new company. The president offered me a promotion, but I preferred to remain as a regular employee. 3 years later, Benjamin and I got married. I never thought I'd marry, but finding such an attractive man like Benjamin changed my mind. I'm very happy now.
I had little social or romantic experience when I entered into an arranged marriage. The man I married was the son of a small to medium-sized company's president. My family also owned a small business with a few dozen employees. Our parents probably met somewhere and, realizing they had children of marriageable age, arranged our meeting. I lost my mom when I was young, and my dad raised me alone. Being an only daughter, he was concerned about my future and somewhat forcefully arranged the marriage. As for me, I was shy and not very good at making friends. After graduating high school, I started working at my dad's company. I had no part-time job experience and never went out at night. I wasn't interested in romance, so the idea of an arranged marriage actually suited me. I had a crush during my school days, but never dated anyone. The only men I interacted with were my dad and the male employees in their 40s at our company. Having almost no experience in love, I thought I couldn't possibly get married. However, I was lucky to have this arranged marriage opportunity, and I wanted to put my dad at ease, so everything went smoothly and led to marriage. My husband was 3 years older than me, but looked much younger. He also joined his dad's company after high school and was expected to become its president. The business was doing well, and, as it turned out, he was quite my type. I fell for him at our first meeting but couldn't make the first move. To my surprise, he proposed during our second meeting alone. Overwhelmed with joy, I happily accepted. And so, after just 2 meetings, we got married, and he became my husband. Our married life began in his parents' home. He wanted to stay close to observe his dad's work, as he would eventually take over the company. I moved in with my husband's parents as per the arrangement. My in-laws were delighted that I could live with them, which I knew would reassure my dad. But this feeling was short-lived, starting from the second day of our marriage. I lost my mother when I was young, so I can do all kinds of household chores. Well, I thought I could. That morning, as I went down to make breakfast before my husband woke up, I found my mother-in-law, Grace, already awake. "Oh, good morning. You're late. Have you cleaned the entranceway yet?" I was surprised. It was only 6 a.m. "I'm sorry, I'll quickly clean the entranceway," I said, rushing to sweep the front door area. So, cleaning the entrance is a morning routine in my husband's house. I resolved to wake up earlier from the next day. Then, I prepared breakfast for 4, but my husband didn't come down for until 7 a.m. Instead of eating right away, he lay on the sofa watching TV. "You should first serve coffee and the newspaper when your husband wakes up," Grace said while eating her breakfast, startling me. "I apologize," I responded, handing my husband his coffee and the newspaper. He didn't even look at me, just drank his coffee and read the paper. I really need to learn more. I reflected on my lack of experience and tried harder from the next day. Initially, I attributed Grace's constant nagging to my inexperience and followed her instructions. Eventually, when our daughter was born, I had to juggle childcare with everything else. Grace never interfered in household or childcare matters, continuing her relentless criticisms. I kept telling myself it was due to my immaturity. One day, unable to bear Grace's constant complaints, I appealed to my husband. "Grace criticizes me every day. I can't stand it," I said in tears. However, my husband dismissed it. "It's your fault," he said indifferently. Feeling like I was about to break, I said, "I know I have my faults, but Grace goes too far. She uses me as her outlet for stress. I want you to talk to her." I was on the brink of breaking down, mentally and physically. But my husband's response was shocking. "I married you despite your immaturity. Mom is trying to make you a proper adult. Can't you see that?" he retorted angrily. "Even so, Grace's behavior is excessive," I argued. Suddenly, he became calm and said, "If you speak ill of Mom, let's get a divorce. Go back to your parents' house." He left the room. I couldn't comprehend his words at first, but as I calmed down, the reality of his words and the thought of divorce crossed my mind. Anticipating Grace's intervention, I decided to return to my parents' house for the time being. The next day at my parents' house, I received divorce papers from my husband. I resolved to go through with the divorce. However, my dad opposed it. He must have been upset about his only daughter getting divorced so soon. I explained the situation earnestly, but he only advised me to endure. Now that I think about it, Dad was always lenient with his mother, but strict with Mom. Perhaps he was also concerned about appearances when his daughter returned home after a divorce. In the end, Dad took me back home, where I apologized to my husband and Grace, and things went back to how they were. But since then, Grace's criticisms escalated. One day, as I was busy with household chores, "Coffee," Grace said. Surprised, I replied, "Yes," and served her coffee. It was the first time Grace had asked me for something, though my husband often did. I usually did the cooking, cleaning, and tidying up, but had never been asked to bring coffee or anything else. Maybe she's tired? I thought at the time, but then it continued the next day and the day after. "Coffee, newspaper." She would just sit on the sofa, not moving at all. I started wishing she would do these things herself, but then, during a meal, "Oh, today's seasoning is too strong. Are you trying to make us sick?" she said. I replied, "I'm sorry, I'll remake it." But she said, "No, it's okay. It would probably be the same anyway," eating her meal while clearly complaining. I had been criticized for my seasoning before, but this time she added spiteful comments. I was a bit angry but could only apologize. "I'm terribly sorry. I'll be more careful in the future." I apologized again. My husband and father-in-law, Daniel, seemed unconcerned, laughing while watching TV. Only my daughter looked at me with concern. Honestly, I didn't want her to see me being scolded. That's why, even when Grace criticized me, I would just say, "Understood," and try to ignore it. But perhaps that bothered her. Her criticisms began to extend to my daughter. "It's the parent's fault if the child doesn't have manners. Since the parent lacks manners, the child becomes ill-mannered too," she would say loudly in front of my daughter. That was too much. "Please, Grace, could you speak a little softer?" I asked, but she became hysterical. "You're the one who raised her that way. I'm just trying to teach her properly, and you're making me out to be the villain?" she screamed. Even my husband finally noticed and asked, "What's going on?" But when I explained, he said, "Well, you can't blame her," defending Grace. From then on, Grace would call me over for any little thing and berate me. In my younger days, I thought it was my inadequacies that upset Grace. Now, I realize it's different. She just wants to torment her daughter-in-law. Realizing this, I gradually started to feel a sense of disgust towards Grace. However, as long as we lived together, I had to see her face every day. Whenever I mentioned wanting to visit my parents, "Planning to neglect your duties here? You've become quite presumptuous," she would complain. Fearing her complaints if I went back home without permission, I hardly ever returned after getting married. During this time, my real dad passed away in a traffic accident. It was so sudden that I was in shock, but I couldn't listen to Grace's nagging anymore and rushed to my family home. I was too busy to remember what happened next. My dad's business collapsed, unable to recover after his sudden death. The company's lawyer, a friend of Dad's, handled all the paperwork, allowing me to stay beside Dad's portrait. Then, unexpectedly, the lawyer informed me of an inheritance from Dad. Being an only child, some real estate was left to me even after paying the final salaries to the employees. Despite my limited contact with him after marriage, Dad had always been concerned about me. Mixed feelings of happiness and regret for not being able to return home earlier overwhelmed me, and I couldn't stop crying. The inheritance amounted to a substantial sum of $1.2 million. I was surprised by the amount, but my husband's reaction was even more striking. He accompanied me to hear the will, unable to hide his delight even though it was right after Dad's death. His mind seemed entirely preoccupied with the inheritance. I looked at him and felt the same disgust I had for Grace. He had ignored my struggles with Grace, never helped with childcare or Daniel's company, just idly spent his days at home. I vowed to myself, who says I have to give him the inheritance? And began to contemplate a plan. As expected, when everything was settled and I returned home, Grace was waiting. Instead of her usual complaints, "You must be exhausted, take some rest," and she spoke to me in a way she never had before. In the decades since our marriage, I had never once received words of comfort from her. I was speechless at her sudden change, but her next words made everything clear. "By the way, I heard your dad left you an inheritance." I realized then. Grace was after my inheritance. I realized that my feelings had progressed from anger to hatred. Trying to hide my emotions, I calmly said, "Yes, that's right," while suppressing my loathing. "We'll be busy now. Our company needs rejuvenating," Grace mentioned, eyeing my inheritance as a means to revitalize their business. The fact that she could discuss such matters so soon after my dad's passing shocked me. "Yeah, the car's been acting up lately too," my husband chimed in, clearly in a good mood. The thought of both Grace and my husband talking like this intensified my hatred. Sensing something was off, my daughter suggested, "Mom, let's take a break," and led me to our room. Thanks to her, I managed to escape the situation. From then on, Grace stopped her nagging, and she and my husband would excitedly discuss plans for reviving the company and look at catalogs for new cars. I suppressed my hatred as I went through each day. In a bold move, they even appointed my husband as the president of the company. He began spending lavishly, giving bonuses to employees and investing in new equipment without restraint. The employees, initially puzzled, soon praised the new president as they benefited from his generosity, and the company buzzed with new life. Even our home gradually underwent renovations, with new appliances for household chores. For a moment, I thought that maybe, if life continued like this, free from criticism and relatively peaceful, it might be bearable. But when I thought of decades of mistreatment and the way Grace and my husband were using that inheritance as if it were their own, my hatred returned, stronger than ever, and I knew I had to execute my plan. The day to put my plan into action arrived. That day was the company's recreational trip. They had never mentioned such a trip before, but this time they decided to take all the employees. Of course, I was not taken along. My husband and in-laws left cheerfully. As soon as they departed, my daughter and I began our plan. We had a moving truck ready, which filled with our packed belongings and moved to an apartment I had secretly bought. After Dad's death and my return home, my daughter and I had discussed and decided to buy an apartment to live in just the two of us. We had slowly acquired furniture for our immediate needs. Previously, Grace's watchful eye would have made it impossible for me to live freely. However, recently she had become more outgoing, and when I went out, she didn't complain but saw me off without a word. I had been shopping with my daughter for furniture and appliances for our new home. She surprisingly agreed to the plan. Typically quiet and reserved like me, she rarely spoke at home, only discussing her school life occasionally. She had always known about Grace's bullying and had supported and defended me. Grace's mood swings often affected her too, which is why she agreed to the plan. I had been mostly forbidden by Grace to go out with my daughter, as she claimed it would neglect the household chores. Now, being able to shop together and visit apartments, I felt truly happy. My husband and in-laws, unaware of this, must have been enjoying their trip. I regretted that I would not be able to see their surprised faces when they returned the next day. And then they came back from the trip in high spirits. I don't know what happened after that. The day after they returned from the trip, I received an angry call from my husband. "What are you doing? Where are you?" he shouted. "I can no longer live with your family. That's why I left the house. My daughter is with me," I calmly replied. "I've been sporting your immaturity all this time." His words confirmed he had always looked down on me. So, he never said or did anything, even though he knew Grace was bullying me. I regretted not seeing his true nature despite years together. But now I feel no affection for my husband. I won't accept this, he keeps saying. You are now a stranger to me, I replied. What are you saying? We haven't even signed divorce papers. He laughed, but I had the last laugh. You had gave me the divorce papers, remember? Grace's name was even written as a witness. In fact, I had the divorce papers. Previously, when I was driven out of the house, the divorce papers had been sent to my parents' home, and I kept them hidden instead of throwing them away. After Dad died, I had filed the divorce papers as part of my plan. In reality, we had been strangers for a long time. His response was silence. Then I heard Grace's familiar voice. Do you realize what you've done? This is a crime. Grace's voice, always scolding me, echoed in my ears. I calmly replied, It's not a crime, Grace. You were the witness on the divorce papers. That's a story from the past. To bring that up now? Grace shouted and hurled insults at me. I've endured your constant nagging every day. Even when you gave me divorce papers, I tolerated it and continued to live. But now you're using the inheritance Dad left me for various expenses, aren't you? Well, that's... Grace tried to make excuses, but I interrupted her. I'm done with that kind of life. Fortunately, there were the divorce papers. Since they were never filed, I went ahead and submitted them. Is that a crime? Grace was speechless. I concluded, Thank you for everything. I'll be living with my daughter now. Take care of yourself. And hung up. That marked the end of a long period of revenge. As I expected, my ex-husband and former in-laws faced consequences. The money spent on reviving the company, buying new cars, and living lavishly turned into debt, and eventually the company collapsed. They apparently couldn't repay the money and even had to sell the family home. My ex-husband, unable to find stable work, resorted to part-time jobs. Grace turned to alcohol and was eventually hospitalized with suspected dementia. As for me, even though I have the inheritance Dad left, I didn't want to take it easy and instead gained experience working part-time. Having married through an arranged marriage and living without any knowledge of society, it was tough at first, but now I enjoy the satisfaction of earning my own money and my days are fulfilling. My daughter secured a job and is busy working. Having married through an arranged marriage and endured many hardships, I want her to experience life, find good opportunities, and choose a partner that suits her. I'm now living life for myself, enjoying it in a way I never did before.
Exactly as I feared. My bad premonitions had come true. It was more resignation than anger, a feeling of, I knew it. James would surely do the same thing again. My tears and anger, James' apologies, they were all just temporary. My name is Lily. I'm an average working woman, neither beautiful nor particularly skilled at my job. Yet somehow I ended up getting to know a man I met at a bar and smoothly progressed to marriage. My female friends often say, "You're lucky to be married to a handsome man." But it's not as easy as it sounds. Women are always openly scheming around James, and he's well aware of his own charm. If you keep being so demanding, I might get taken away by another woman. He had stopped listening to me. Outside, he plays the role of a loving, gentle husband, but at home, he's a complete henpecked husband. His mother, James could have married a better woman. Why settle for someone so plain and unimpressive? She's disliked me from the first meeting. Every time we visit, I'm bullied, and though my father-in-law, William, tries to calm my mother-in-law, Grace, her snide remarks never end. James, my husband, Mom's just lonely because her only son is away. Just ignore her. He's more concerned about appeasing her than caring for me. They say love is blind, but often, Mom's feeling lonely and cold. He goes back to his parents' house once a month, and it's too much for me. I wish we could spend more time together, just the two of us. Especially since we've been married for less than 2 years and don't have kids yet. What's up? Dressing up all fancy? Just been invited by some friends. We're having a guys' night out. But we just had lunch. I was about to suggest going out for dinner. So early? We're gathering early since it's been a while. Something felt off. It's been a while. You just had a gathering. He paused while tying his shoelaces. It's a different group this time. Really, it's not an affair, is it? I had to ask directly because, well, my husband has a history. 6 months into our marriage, returning from my first outing since our wedding, I saw my husband stumbling and playfully kissing another woman. My friend and I were stunned, but my friend quickly said, "Take a photo. We need evidence." I suppressed the evidence of the affair when I was told to do so. I confronted him as soon as I got home. "You kissed me, too." But when I showed him the kissing video on my phone, he finally admitted it. They had met randomly at a bar, bonded over their mutual love of baseball, and exchanged contacts. It was their second meeting, and things got carried away with the alcohol. I cried my eyes out at the shock of his infidelity. He panicked. "I'm sorry. I won't ever do something like this again." He apologized profusely to me. I made him delete her contact in front of me. But I still wonder if it really was only their second meeting, and if they hadn't been involved before our marriage. After hearing his friends at the wedding say how popular he was in high school and college, I felt lucky he chose me. But now, those words make me anxious about him cheating again. After the affair came to light, he was subdued at first, but now it seems he's forgotten about it entirely, or rather, he didn't learn his lesson. Lately, he prioritizes his friends over me, quickly leaving on his days off. Even when I plan a 2-day trip, he suddenly says he has work and ends up not going. I'm even suspicious if these friends are really just men. "See you!" Lost in thought, I didn't notice him leave. I sighed. Why did he marry me? Did he think I was the kind of woman who would tolerate his cheating? I earn a bit more than James. Maybe he's just using me. Lost in thought, my mobile phone rang. Is it James, wanting me to deliver something he forgot? Annoyed, I checked my phone. It was a call from my friend, Chloe. "It's been a while. Hope I'm not disturbing. Just concerned about how Lily's doing." I couldn't help but share my feelings with her. "I'm physically fine, but getting snide remarks from Grace and James has been going out more." Chloe seemed puzzled, pausing before responding. "That's tough, Lily. You never seem to catch a break." "I know. I just want some peace of mind, to think about children or future." Lately, whenever I bring up kids, James quickly changes the subject. It's not that he's against having children, he just finds the thought bothersome. James seems content, as long as he's enjoying the moment. "So what will you do?" Her question brought me back to reality. Continuing like this isn't good. I feel like I'm just being persuaded by James. I decided to take a bold step. I'll follow him. I'm off today. If he's cheating, he's probably meeting her today. Chloe calmly replied, "Got it. I'm off to work, but good luck." In support of Chloe, I am. "Yeah," I responded. Ignoring the situation would only make things worse. I need irrefutable evidence to make him reflect. I felt a strange sense of mission. At that moment, I still hoped James would change. But where could he have gone? He mentioned a drinking party, but if he's cheating, maybe he's out shopping with her. I searched for James's account on social media. James regularly updates his social media, and I once peeked out of curiosity. He closed it immediately, saying it was embarrassing, but I remembered the username. I never checked his social media closely, not wanting to pry, respecting his privacy. If I had seen it, I would have been tempted to tell him, and I would have respected my husband's wish to be embarrassed in his own way. But now, potentially being betrayed, that respect didn't matter. I searched his social media by the name I remembered. There it is. There was a photo of him, happily shopping with a woman wearing sunglasses at a fancy department store. His profile stated, single man, $100K income. I couldn't believe he could lie like that. I took a taxi to the department store in the photo. They were probably at the brand section on the first floor. If their shopping took long, I might find them. Walking through the store, checking shops, I heard a familiar voice. Ew, Sophia, I like this! This cost $8,000. I just bought you a $2,000 coat. It was James's voice. Exactly what I thought. I didn't want to be right, but I had to face it. I took out my phone, switched to video mode, and approached them. James, didn't you promise no more cheating? His reaction was entirely different from the first time. Oh, again? I was infuriated. Again? You're blaming me for catching me cheating? He sighed, making a gesture of exasperation. Was he trying to look good in front of her? But I wasn't in a state to care about appearances. But, without evidence, you just run away again, right? Didn't you promise no more lies? My anger from the first time he cheated surged, and I raised my voice, not caring who saw. Some customers turned to look at us. Then a laugh, clearly mocking. Lady, it's pathetic to cling to your husband at your age. It's a marital issue, none of your business. She seemed surprised at my comeback, then visibly annoyed. Figures why James cheats on you. Maybe you should reflect on your actions. Pressured by her words, James also started speaking. It's your fault for not making an effort to prevent cheating. You always come home from work with a tired face. You've given up being a woman. Look at her and learn. He pointed at his mistress. She, pleased with James's words, clapped her hands mockingly. How hilarious! She laughed at me. I was beyond dismayed. They seemed like a different species. I decided to leave this place quickly. I won't keep this matter just between us two. I'll report this to William and Grace. James, with a smug expression, Go ahead, he said. I left the spot and exited the department store. I was completely ridiculed by them, even though I did nothing wrong. Later, a sense of emptiness and sadness welled up inside me. Why? I muttered to no one. Tears streamed down my face, but I felt it was a waste to cry over such a man. I couldn't let this go. I had to find a way to make him pay. I called my parents and told them everything. They were furious and said I could come home anytime. When I called James's parents, William answered, so I told him about the second infidelity. William apologized, confused. I'm sorry. He apologized to me, bewildered. His apology felt more sincere than James, even though he wasn't the one who did it. But Grace, who took over the call midway, Are you sure you're not mistaken? And, James is popular, so don't make a fuss just because he talks to other women. She completely dismissed me. Frustrated, William silenced Grace and hung up. I had a feeling dealing with the in-laws would be difficult. Grace seemed to want to dismiss my son's infidelity as my mistake. I didn't expect that. I wanted to rely on my parents, but with my mom hospitalized and my dad caring for her, I didn't want to trouble them. Dad tried calling James a few times to understand the situation, but James avoided the calls. Yet, he had the audacity to brag about his mistress to me, unsolicited. I started to feel mentally drained. I couldn't rely on my family, and Grace would side with her son, maybe even blame me. Then there was William. I think he's reasonable, but people change when it involves family. I couldn't handle this alone anymore. I decided to go to the in-laws alone for a discussion. I didn't bring James to avoid him sweet-talking his way out. Arriving at their house, Grace informed me that William had just left, possibly the worst timing. But having come alone, Grace sensed something was up. Unable to bear it anymore, I poured out everything that had happened. While speaking, anger brought tears to my eyes. However, Grace remained cold, and after hearing everything, "Is that why you came here?" she scoffed. I impulsively asked, "Grace, as a woman, wouldn't you be hurt if your husband cheated?" I asked. It was probably the first time I spoke so directly to Grace, but seeking empathy from her was a mistake. "James is handsome. You should tolerate some things. You should realize that you and James are mismatched. Then you wouldn't be so dissatisfied." Still, I protested. "But Grace, I've never been cheated on, so I can't understand." She added insult to injury. Ultimately, I left their house quickly. As time passed, Grace's words hurt more. Walking, tears came. I had no expectations from Grace, but it became clear I had no allies in this situation. Feeling gloomy, I didn't feel like going straight home, so I decided to stop by a cafe. Though still hurt, sipping coffee gradually calmed me. I couldn't focus on the magazine I picked up, but it somewhat distracted me. Just as I was about to leave, a familiar voice entered the cafe, unusually cheerful and loud. "Let's have lunch here!" It was Grace, unusually cheerful and loud. I sneaked a peek at the man's face. Grace, behaving unusually giddy for her age, leaned into the man's arm. It was clear there were more than acquaintances. Could Grace be having an affair? My mind went blank for a moment, but their behavior seemed unmistakable. She hadn't offended me earlier. Perhaps she was conscious of her own infidelity. I felt incredibly angry. Luckily, my seat was hidden from most of the cafe. I took out my phone and discreetly took pictures of their intimate behavior. I couldn't forgive James or Grace. I decided to plan their retribution. When I suggested a family dinner, even my busy cheating husband agreed. Yeah, Mom gets lonely. I should be there for her. I was so excited to get on board that I contacted my parents. I inwardly scorned knowing about the other man, but it wasn't the time to confront my husband. A week later, we had a dinner at his parents' house. I played the role of a quiet wife. After dinner, as everyone started having coffee, William said, "Suddenly wanting a family dinner? Is something up?" My husband looked tense. I had already told William about my husband's cheating. William was shocked. "You, with a family?" His anger was palpable, but Grace interrupted, predictably. "The wife is to blame for being cheated on. It's your fault for lacking charm." Grace spat venomously, as if warning me not to say more. At that moment, something inside me snapped. "Oh, so William lacks charm too?" Eh? They hadn't expected that. William and Grace spoke up almost simultaneously. "Because, Grace, you're cheating, aren't you? Based on your logic, William must be lacking charm." William looked at Grace, half doubting, half believing. Grace, red to her ears, burst out in anger. "Me? Cheating? Ridiculous! You lying wife!" Normally, I'd be overpowered, but not today. Ignoring Grace's intimidation, I pulled out my phone from my bag, showing the evidence photo to everyone. You! William, at a loss for words, turned to me. Not true! Not true! Grace desperately tried to cover it up. But it's hard to deny, when caught embracing another man in a cafe. When I saw it, my husband was surprisingly there. Mom! No way! My husband was shaken. Mom's such a dirty woman! Grace shouted back, You're doing the same thing! I never imagined my husband and Grace would end up shouting at each other. William interrupted the commotion. Enough! Apologize to your wife first! My husband, chastised by William, Why don't you apologize to your own wife first? Looked dejected. Lily, I'm truly sorry, he said. It's not you who should be apologizing, William. Grace glared as usual. Also, I'm divorcing you. You cheated with my friend. Leave the house and prepare to pay compensation in the divorce. How can I? I've never worked. Grace's voice trembled. William coldly stated, You're well enough to cheat. You can work. Realizing he was serious, Grace turned to my husband. James, you understand me, right? Let's live together. His response was cold. No way! You betrayer! They were both selfish, only thinking of themselves. I hired a lawyer and filed for compensation in the divorce against my husband and his mistress. William, now my ex-father-in-law, did the same, hiring the same firm to divorce Grace and claim compensation. My husband ended up alone in an old apartment, and Grace struggled in unfamiliar jobs, eventually working in a relative's factory under harsh conditions. Both are too poor to move away, so I hear rumors about them. They blame each other for the divorce and now hurl insults. Meanwhile, I enjoy my freedom, living alone. Less stressed than when I was with my cheating husband and cruel Grace. I might date or remarry, but for now, I'm enjoying my free, single life.
9 people? That's just too many. What do you think this is, a baseball team? I've always had a dream since I was a child. A cute house like the ones in picture books, with a white dog in the yard. But reality isn't always so sweet. I finally managed to get my own house, but when I returned from work, it had transformed into something like a dormitory. I won't forgive them for this. My name is Mary, a 32-year-old office worker. I've been focused on my career, but since my late 20s, my friends started getting married one after another. There were months when wedding gifts really added up to my expenses. Feeling a mysterious urgency, I started trying my hand at dating.
Mary, when are you going to give me grandkids?
Every time I visited home, my dad, David, would say this, and it made me so uncomfortable that I gradually stopped visiting as much. My mom passed away when I was young, so I grew up with my dad, my brother, and my paternal grandparents. My brother married early and built a house near our childhood home. He has 2 daughters, my adorable nieces. I've got cute nieces at my brother's place. Isn't that enough for you?
But you, Mary.
We always ended up arguing about it. Then, after a while, my dad was involved in a traffic accident. By the time I got to the hospital, he was in a very bad state. My energetic father quietly passed away while my brother's family and I watched over him. Dad, I had someone I wanted you to meet. Actually, at that time I had a boyfriend, introduced to me by a friend. He had just proposed, and we decided to marry. He was a bit of a show-off, but a kind man. His name was Richard. Now with both my parents gone and my brother having his own family, It's gotten lonely, hasn't it? I muttered this, stroking my cat Lucy after returning home from the funeral.
Mary, you're not alone. You're going to be a part of my family.
Richard, sitting next to me, gently held my hand. He came to check on me, worried about how I was doing.
Let's build a happy home together.
I thought I could have an ordinary happiness. Little did I know back then what would happen. Welcome! It's a bit cramped, though. I visited Richard's family home for a family meeting. Patricia, his mother, spoke plainly and was full of energy. I hesitated as I entered the room, thinking it would be just the in-laws, but it was crowded with in-laws, step-grandparents, Richard's brother Charles, and his wife Sarah, and their kids, Thomas and John. Nice to meet you. Wow, that's a lot of people. The house, built by James, Richard's father, felt somewhat run down. Honestly, it was old, but the family welcomed me warmly, easing my nerves. On the way back in the car, speaking of which, there were so many people today. Christmas or Thanksgiving must be quite an event, I said to Richard, who laughed in response.
It really is cramped there. Can't believe they manage to live like that every day.
Hearing this, I was genuinely surprised. Richard's family home was never really spacious. I thought it was just a temporary gathering. 8 people in that house? Wow, that's something. Richard said it was originally just the 4 of them, his in-laws and step-grandparents. But then Charles, who couldn't hold down a job, moved in one day with Sarah and their kids without asking.
Charles will probably move out once he finds a stable job,
Richard said with a laugh. Back then I just thought Richard's family had its challenges, nothing more. After marriage, Richard and I, along with our cat Lucy, lived a peaceful life without kids yet. Richard was fairly helpful around the house, and Lucy was fond of us. As for his family, Charles and his family were still living in that house. The walls were covered in children's scribbles, and Patricia laughed, saying she gave up on cleaning them long ago. Sarah, Charles's wife, always looked tired. She was older than Charles and close to my age, so we became friends quickly. Hey, Sarah, hurry up!
Mary, don't just stand there. We're out of beer.
Whenever I visited, it seemed like Sarah and I were the only ones not sitting down. We were constantly busy, and I wondered if this was our fate. But the thought of Sarah doing this every day was honestly frightening. Sarah worked full-time, filling in for Charles, who hardly worked. I hesitated to ask, but finally did. Have you ever thought about leaving him? I've heard that before. Well, it's tough as it is, but we have kids, and he used to be so kind. I couldn't see any good in Charles, but I guess they had their reasons. That's what I thought. It was around this time.
How about we build our own house?
Richard suddenly suggested. I was surprised, but also happy. Actually, I've had a small dream since I was little. I'd always dreamed of living in a quaint house like those in storybooks, with a white dog in the yard. I have a white dog in the garden. I'd never told anyone, but when I shared this dream with Richard, a bit shyly.
That sounds great,
he said. We spent our free days visiting model homes, choosing a housemaker, and a year later, our dream home was completed.
We've got to make sure we keep up with the mortgage,
Richard said. Absolutely, I replied with a smile. On the first weekend after moving in, Richard's family came over for a housewarming party. Here, Joseph, hand over the gift. We're coming in. Oh, what a lovely house! Patricia seemed quite pleased, as if it was her own home. I smiled politely.
Look, it's a celebration!
And then Joseph handed me 2 cans of beer, looking like he'd just bought them. I mean, seriously? Charles wandered around the house and finding our bedroom, exclaimed, "Oh, this bed is super comfy!" Saying that, Charles started rolling around on the bed. The kids, following their father's lead, got excited.
Look, there's a cat!
They ran around, chasing our pet cat Lucy. Lucy is friendly, but she had never met so many people at once, so she got scared and hid in the back of the room. Poor Lucy. I glanced at Charles and Richard, who had already started a party with the in-laws. "Mary, Patricia is insisting on appetizers quickly. Can I use your kitchen? And sorry about scaring Lucy," Sarah said apologetically. Why is someone as nice as her with a guy like that? I had grown to care for Sarah like a real sister. "I'll handle it, Sarah. You relax," I said, but she still helped with the cooking while managing the kids. The step-grandparents were always quiet, almost like dolls, not talking much. But they said, "What a lovely home, right, James?"
Yeah, sorry for the noise,
James replied, even though the loud ones were the in-laws. The step-grandparents were the ones with common sense in that house. In other words, the odd ones out were the in-laws, Charles, and probably my husband Richard too. From then on, the in-laws and Charles would visit our house almost every weekend. They partied till dawn. So loud that we got complaints from neighbors and even the police once. The step-grandparents, Sarah, and the kids hadn't visited our house since the housewarming. But the in-laws didn't hesitate to put me to work. I was at my wits' end. Richard had also started showing his true colors. Once, I had a cold. I was too weak to prepare dinner and asked Richard, who was home early from work, to pick something up. He came back with 2 hamburgers. I couldn't even think of eating them. "Why hamburgers? I can't eat this right now," I said without thinking, instead of getting angry.
"What are you talking about, Mary? You need to eat to get your strength back,"
Richard said. What? If I had the energy to eat that, I wouldn't have asked for help in the first place. I thought to myself. By the way, when Richard was sick once, "Want a hamburger?" I asked him sarcastically. His response was,
"No, that's ridiculous. Are you trying to annoy me?"
That's what I said. In short, this family was self-centered and lacked empathy. They were done for as people. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts. I'll make sure you all get what you deserve. With that thought, I smirked wickedly. A few days later, I had a business trip scheduled. On the morning of my departure, "Well, I'm off then," I said cheerfully to Richard.
"Was your business trip starting today? What a coincidence. Sarah is also on a business trip from today,"
said Richard. "Really? I had no idea. What a coincidence," I replied.
"Mom said they'd be in trouble without someone to take care of the house."
Richard laughed mockingly, making me think, what a jerk. I was busy during my time away from home. Days flew by quickly, and before I knew it, a lot of time had passed. A major typhoon hit, and I contacted Richard.
"We're fine, but the family home had some serious leaks,"
he replied. Thinking of the old family home, I felt it was understandable. The day I returned home arrived. As I walked from the nearest bus stop to my house, I heard loud, unrefined laughter echoing in the residential area. Is someone having a barbecue in their yard? The noise was that loud. This will surely attract complaints from the neighbors. Wait, what? I was shocked. The loud voices were unmistakably coming from my house. As I cautiously opened the door, I found many bags in the entrance, and the walls were covered in graffiti. Stunned, I was at a loss for words.
"Hey, Mary, welcome back."
A drunken Richard greeted me. Frustrated by his insensitivity, I entered the living room to find equally drunk in-laws and Charles, with Sarah making appetizers for them in the kitchen. The step-grandparents were quiet as usual, and the kids were happily drawing on the living room walls. Then there was another young woman I didn't know. Overwhelmed by everything, I felt my mind about to snap. "What is all this?" I asked Richard calmly, trying not to get emotional.
Didn't I tell you? The family home had leaks because of the typhoon.
I heard that part. And then? Richard's story was this. The family home had a massive leak, and the in-laws, having nowhere else to go, temporarily moved into our house. Without Sarah, who was away, the in-laws, Charles and Richard, decided,
"We thought, why not live here?"
Richard said proudly. What? Even with this explanation, I was baffled. To my silence,
"It's fine, we're family. We have extra rooms, no problem,"
the in-laws added, smiling.
"It's all right, Mary. The walls got a bit dirty, but it's just kid stuff,"
Charles said nonchalantly. And who is that woman? I asked about the woman lounging on the sofa, fiddling with her phone.
"Oh, that's Karen, a mutual friend of me and Sarah. Right, Sarah?"
Charles asked her. Yeah, that's right, she answered with a smile.
"This girl, Karen, was kicked out by her parents, and Richard said it was okay for her to stay."
Thanks in advance, the not-so-bright-looking girl replied, leaving me utterly confused. In our not-so-spacious living room, there were 9 adults and 2 children. The room was a mess, the walls covered in scribbles, making it look nothing like a new house. The family was loud like a dormitory. I couldn't help but lose my temper. Seriously? 9 people is too many. Are you guys planning to start a baseball team or what? Then I realized something. Hey, where's Lucy? Our pet cat Lucy was nowhere to be found. When I asked Richard and the others, they all claimed ignorance, while frantically searching for Lucy.
"Lucy, huh? Dad opened the window to smoke and she ran away,"
Thomas told me. Charles glared at the boy as if he had said something he shouldn't have. What were you thinking? I told you to be careful with the windows, I said, near tears. Richard, looking annoyed, said,
"Oh, come on. It's just a cat. We can get another one. What's with you? If you're unhappy, we can just get divorced, you know."
He said it with such a disdainful face. You just said divorce? I asked.
"Yeah, I did. I might consider not doing it if you apologize to us."
Richard, along with the in-laws and Charles, seemed confident that I wouldn't go through with a divorce. I replied, "Oh, really? Well, then here, write this." I slammed down the divorce papers I had prepared. My section was already filled out. I fetched my pre-packed bags from my room. Done? Why haven't you written it yet? I'm busy, you know. And said coolly to Richard. They were all shocked by my preparedness. Angrily, Patricia said, "Richard, divorce this woman already. We've built the house, so she's useless now." Patricia said that. Realizing too late, Richard said,
Right, Mary. You'll regret divorcing me."
But I had no regrets. What are you talking about? You're the one who's going to struggle. Just write the divorce papers. Once Richard finished writing, I snatched the papers and put them in my bag. Then I went to Charles and said, "Here, you need to write this too," handing him the divorce papers. He laughed.
"What? When did I marry you?"
Looking at the filled-in wife section, Charles said,
"Hey, Sarah, this is..."
Sarah coldly stared at Charles and said, "I'm divorcing you. Write it now, please." To which Charles exclaimed,
Sarah, bite the hand that feeds you, huh?
Joseph was talking nonsense. From my perspective, Sarah had been living like a slave in her in-laws' house. The money she earned was mostly taken by Charles, leaving only a little for living expenses. The money let Charles do whatever he wanted, and the not-so-bright girl in front of me, she was Charles's mistress. "Mary, I think my husband is cheating on me." Sarah had confided in me just before Richard suggested building a house. Sarah had been enduring it all for the sake of her children. But recently, Charles had even started selling Sarah's belongings and the kids' toys for his own gain. She had reached her limit. Then Sarah told me a story. After hearing Sarah's story, I was furious. From that day, Sarah and I started planning our divorces. Sarah gathered thorough evidence of the affair. Her recent business trip was a lie. We met halfway to look for a new place to live. Like me, Sarah's parents had passed away, and she had no relatives to turn to. However, a close friend offered her a job at their shop in another state. It was a good location, and our preparations went smoothly. All that was left was to present the divorce papers. "I want to get some people out of that hellish house." Sarah had made up her mind and was incredibly strong. She had a strong core, but had been used by her in-laws like she was brainwashed. Thinking it would look suspicious to return together, Sarah went back first. She soon contacted me, informing me about the takeover of my house and Charles's brazen mistress moving in. All our conversations and actions until then were a performance. Knowing what was going on, I told Sarah, "We're not living in that house anymore. Let the kids draw on the walls all they want." That's what I told him. Charles, thinking he could now openly live with his mistress, happily signed the divorce papers. "Let's go, Sarah. James and everyone, it's time to leave." The step-grandparents stood up and followed Sarah and her children to the door.
Living with people like you, I had given up on life, but Sarah opened my eyes. Do as you please now,
James said, glaring at the family, and left with his great-grandchildren. The in-laws had been taking money from the step-grandparents as pensions. They were truly awful people. "Well then, take care," we said as we left like a storm.
"You'll regret this."
The family laughed as we left, but we ignored them. Months later, Richard contacted me. Oh, I forgot to block him. I could guess the content of the call, so I answered.
"Mary, come back!"
Richard sounded desperate. I barely contained my laughter. "Come back? We're strangers now," I replied calmly.
"Let me talk. Mary, what do you mean? Why aren't you paying the mortgage?"
Patricia's voice came through, probably snatching the phone from Richard. "What are you talking about? I have no idea." I played dumb, while Patricia sounded frustrated. Apparently, the house's mortgage had already fallen behind last month. When I pressed Richard, he claimed I hadn't been paying the mortgage. What an inconvenience. While I remained silent, Patricia kept talking like a machine gun.
"First of all, this house, you guys had a combined income of $75,000, right? We could have built a better house. We built this as a new home, but it's not what we expected."
Originally, they had planned to take over the house. Sarah had informed me of their discussions. Yes, that's true. But with Richard's $30,000 salary, the bank wouldn't lend us more. If we had taken a joint mortgage, maybe we could have gotten a better house. Hearing this,
"Richard, you lied!"
I could hear Richard and Patricia arguing on the phone. I ignored them, ended the call, and finally blocked his number. Richard had a pretentious personality. Richard always wanted to impress others, especially outside his family. When he suggested building a house, I already had divorce in mind. I told him, "A friend's husband got a mortgage on his own. How cool is that?" I heard these stories like a spell. Richard, wanting to show off, opted for a solo mortgage. I had to hold back my laughter. He probably didn't tell his family because he was afraid of them knowing the truth. But I didn't care. The house was built to Richard's taste. I had no attachment to it anymore. Richard hadn't cheated. But there were no alimony or penalties in our divorce. So, to spite him, I left him with the mortgage debt as my revenge. Let him suffer. And I was able to rescue Sarah, whom I cared for like a sister, from that house. That was my main goal. Later, they couldn't pay the mortgage and the new house was repossessed. But it was a mess inside, with scribbles everywhere, and walls yellowed by cigarette smoke from Charles and his mistress. It didn't look like a recently built house. Richard had to rent a cheap apartment and Joseph and Patricia ended up moving in with him. They'll probably never leave him alone, like parasites. I don't care they're strangers to me now. The only good thing about my former in-laws was that the children weren't affected. Otherwise, they were the worst. Sarah, as Charles's ex-wife, successfully claimed alimony through a lawyer. She had to borrow money, but managed to pay it off. I'm glad for her. Charles and his mistress became outcasts in their community and are now missing. They haven't repaid their debts, confirming how awful they are. Sarah is happily working at her friend's place. Her kids are doing well too. I hope they find happiness this time. James and Barbara seem brighter now, like a weight has been lifted. They sold the old family home and are enjoying their retirement in a distant place with their savings. That's great news. As for me, I've requested a transfer to a local office. I was reunited with Lucy, my cat. Thanks to social media, someone in the neighborhood had found and taken care of her. It's good she's friendly. Now, I live alone in my late father's house. With my brother's approval, I'm saving to build my dream house. And someday, I hope to introduce someone special at my father's grave. Today, I'm working hard towards that goal.